Dr. Kim McMillon is a producer, playwright, and contributor to the anthology Some Other Blues: New Perspectives on Amiri Baraka. McMillon is the editor of Willow's Books anthology Black Fire This Time, published in March of 2022. More recently, in December of last year, Dr. McMillon taught The Poetry of Healing the Body for the San Francisco Writers Institute. She's currently the community liaison for the arts for the School of Social Sciences, Humanities, and Arts at UC Merced. Please give a warm welcome to our moderator, Kim McMillon, who will introduce our speakers to you all.
Thank you all, and I'm so happy to be here. And I'm just saying a welcome to everyone that is attending Words of Liberation, the exploration of Blackness through poetry. Before we start, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of Dr. Nathan Hare on June 10th, 2024. Dr. Nathan Hare was an American sociologist, activist, academic, and psychologist. He was considered the father of Black studies. Dr. Hare made a difference. If it were not for him, I probably wouldn't have done the Black Arts Movement Conference at UC Merced in 2014. He will be missed. Well, what I wanted to talk about is the exploration of Blackness through words of liberation. And I'm so happy to have poet laureates Devorah Major and Robin Lewis, because they opened this door to the idea through their work, which is amazing. They examine women, the control of women, African Americans, and the images, the control of even the images, and society, and how we determine, how society determines who you should be and your place in society. This work, our work seeks complete and total liberation from thoughts and beliefs of what it means to be Black in America. These beliefs that members of society still hold represent a hierarchy that has existed in the United States and the world since society has felt the need to decide who can be on top, who can rule the world, and who can rule women's bodies. We see it playing out right now in our Senate. Senate Republicans blocked legislation on Wednesday that would enshrine a federal right to access contraception, sinking the Democratic-led measure. The vote on the right to contraception act was 51 to 39, falling short of the 60 votes needed to defeat a filibuster and move the bill forward. Republicans said it was unnecessary because the use of birth control is already protected under the Supreme Court precedent. Now, if that doesn't scare everyone, I don't know what will. Tonight, our poets will use poetry and words to take back power and unshackle ourselves with words of liberation. We are liberating our thoughts and minds on what it means to be free in today's society. There are spaces in which Blackness is celebrated through nullifying past biases. This is one of those spaces of liberation. Through poet laureates Devorah Major and Robin Lewis, we bring a righteous table of healing and liberation to all listening, regardless of race, sexual orientation, or beliefs. This evening is rooted in the power of self-liberation. Let me give you a bit about information about Robin and Devorah. Robin, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Robin. Your middle name, Robin Coste Lewis. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Well, I haven't heard anything, so I guess that's good. Robin won the National Book Award for Voyage of the Sable Genius, of the Sable Venus. Her first collection of poetry in 2015, it was named one of the best books of the year by the New Yorker, and the New York Times and Literary Hub named it one of the best books of the last 20 years. Her most recent book is To the Realization of Perfect Helplessness, which won the PEN/Booker Poetry Award and the NAACP Award for Excellence in Literature. Her new book, Archive of Desire, which celebrates the work of Greek poet Constantine Kaveve, is forthcoming from North in 2025. The former poet laureate of Los Angeles, Lewis, is currently writer in residence at the University of Southern California. That is an amazing amount of incredible work that she's done. Devorah Major, born and raised in California, granddaughter of immigrants, documented and undocumented. Devorah Major served as San Francisco's third poet laureate. A baker of pies and a lover of jazz, her poetry has carried her to many countries where she has performed with and without musicians. In 2002, she received the Regina Coppola International Literary Award in Italy, where her sixth book of poetry, With Open Arms, was released in a bilingual edition in 2020. A Willow Press Editor's Choice, her seventh book of poetry, Califia's Daughter, was published by Willow Press in 2020. She is always looking to build a better world and uses her science fiction stories as one voice in Afrofuturism. She will put down her pen to march and call for justice. And that's the truth about Devorah. We are so lucky to have these incredible women here tonight, including our audience of men and women, all of you. Let's open tonight's conversation with the question, how do you see the word liberation in your own work? In other words, if asked how this word might be used to describe your work, what would you say? Who would like to start this first? Devorah, Robin, who's willing to go first on this?
Okay.
Don't rush.
I'm happy to go first, but I just want to say to the audience and to you again, Devorah, that to be here with you is such a profound honor.
Oh,
Devorah is a god in the poetry world, and so anything she wants.
No, I'm not. But
what Devorah wants, Devorah gets. So I'm just being quiet and waiting. So I'm happy to go first if you'd like me to, but I'm just saying the reason why I'm not speaking is you're Devorah Major, so I'm just gonna sit back and wait my turn politely.
Yeah, all of that is not true what you just said, but thank you.
True, Devorah.
I see the hearts.
Yeah. What I would say is one of the biggest things for me is to write what I want to write, how I want to write it. When I first came to, I came through the arts that I was training and performing as an actress and a dancer, and started writing poetry when the Last Poets came out with an album that was all over the radio. I was riding on the bus and black, 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 black. And so that's how I wrote, because that's what we were supposed to be writing. And I wrote what one was supposed to write, and I was political and I was trying to be whatever I considered revolutionary at the times with my words, but it wasn't always, it was what I was supposed to be writing for the times. And so I would say, in terms of your question, Kim, that the idea of letting myself go where I think it's important for me to go, how I think it's important for me to go there, is my definition of liberation in terms of my own work.
Beautiful.
I love that. I love that.
I think for me, I'm riding Devorah's coattails in this way too. I love the question, Kim, first of all. And as you know from our earlier meetings, I struggle over what words mean. So I still don't know if we know what liberation means. So I'm kind of struggling with that. And what Devorah just said was so true. I feel like my own work challenges me a great deal. And, in fact, see, I am going to be improvisational. Maybe I'll read the first poem of my first book to show you as an example what I mean. That was a poem that there are a lot of poems that come to me that I don't want to write. A lot, a great deal. They're painful. They're formally challenging sometimes. They're whatever, boring. Sometimes they're sweet, and joyful. Whatever the case might be, I'm often not in the mood and I don't want to do it. And sometimes you just have to sit there and do it. And I find that the poems that I most resist are the most liberatory for me, because I say yes to things I don't want to say, or I just say it. But about my own personal liberation, see, I don't know about y'all, but I was raised by some really good Southern folk from Louisiana, and they raised us to think we were free always. always. So the idea that I'm working towards some liberation, that's just silly to me. It was like I was born free. And I'm not talking about slave, like even like, I don't know how to put this in words. Our liberation is never dependent upon the state nor the nation. Never. It's all in here. And that's how I was raised. So I feel pretty free at all times.
Beautiful,
Yeah,
beautiful.
I would say I second that. I was not at all raised by by Southern parents, but I was raised by artists.
Yeah, exactly.
My mother painted, my father was a writer,
Wow.
and my godfather's a writer. I was raised by artists, and then their friends were mostly artists. And
Yeah,
so it was like adults talked to my brother and I as if we were people, not
yeah,
children.
yeah,
And we were also brought up just, yeah, to be free. You are free. You are free to think. You are free to go your path, not the path that somebody tells you this is the path you're supposed to be on.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that there is, I have that sense of that I share that with you, Rob, and have
Yeah.
always have
Yeah, my
been
sister
there.
talk about my father put tools in our hands when we were single digits. Like we were under the hood of a car, we were on the roof of our house, we were
Mm.
under the pipes fixing the plumbing, and we had brothers. Yeah, it wasn't a thing. So I don't know. And my dad, my father was a janitor, my mom was a housewife. You know, it was just that's just what they believed is just, let the spirit go forth. And
Well,
it's, I mean, the restrictions my family placed on us were about my father did not believe he wouldn't stop us, but he didn't believe that one should not court a person. The old school word, right? You have to court. He was like, you should spend some time getting to know a person. And now that I'm older, I was like, damn, he was so right. He was so right. But stuff like that, like not you can't, you shan't. It was never that.
well,
Yeah.
I'm going to put a little twist in that now because one of the things that happened, I think we all have mentors. And I know one of the mentors for devorah was James Baldwin.
Yeah.
And when we when we are with the people that we want to see our work and believe in us, are you hesitant have you ever been hesitant to put any work out that you might have found within yourself was liberating, but you were unsure how it would be seen by the people around you? What would you
No,
say about that?
no.
Did you really give me a no?
Yeah, no.
Okay, okay.
No,
Agreed.
I felt supported and loved by the people that, and they wanted to, no, I did. I mean, sometimes they gave me criticisms or thought what I said was not well said or was not well thought out, but no, I was kind of bold. No.
Can you tell the story that you told to me about your being upset by the number of rejection letters and what Baldwin told you about that?
Oh, I was so naive. So I'm sending out these things. I'm sending out whole manuscript of poetry and stuff. And I've got like two publications, right? So I'm getting no, 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 no. So I wrote him. We had a ongoing correspondence in between when I would see him and said, "Oh, I'm so demoralized. I'm getting all these rejections. You told me I'm such a great poet. What the hell's going on?" And he told me to start wallpapering my wall with the rejections. And that if I ran out of rejections before I ran out of wall, to just tell him he would send me some from the trunk full he had. And it was like, oh,
Beautiful. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was like, oh,
Yes,
this is how it works. Okay.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
You
I
know,
often tell my students that their job is to get 100 rejections in a year to
Oh,
shift the power structure. It's like, you know, if you sit around waiting for approval, you just won't. It's just a setup. It's a setup. You know, I love what you just said, and I love that he told you that, Devorah. It's like, it's a fact. It's the nature of the work.
yes.
yeah,
I get rejections all the time.
yeah, so do I. And someone told me once, which I've tried, and it has worked at least once. When you get rejected, just send your stuff back there because after they've rejected you a few times, your name's so familiar, they're like, I know this person.
Absolutely, absolutely,
It's like,
absolutely.
That's great. Well, Robin, I wanted to ask you a question because when reading Voyages of the Sable Venus,
Yeah.
or Voyage of the Sable Venus, I fell in love.
Mm.
You create and explore a vision of Blackness that seeks to highlight not just the power of Blackness, but also how the Black woman has been displaced. And you use it more than just the poetry. You have these pictures that are just incredible. And if you were being asked about the importance of this work, not just historically, but also from the point of view as a Black woman, what might you say? And I would also love you to just take a moment and read something that you want to, whatever you wish, that kind of shows just your absolute brilliance with words.
I'm not absolutely brilliant. I think you're
I
mixing
think you
them
are.
together. The first book, Voyage, doesn't have any images in it at all. But the second
Okay,
book, to the Realization, has 179 photographs.
thank you.
And they are related because the first book is about how absolutely ill is the Western historical art history project in terms of gender, and I mean all genders, and race, and I mean all races. And I chose to focus on the Black female and how Black females from all around the world were represented in art objects since maybe around 4000 BC to the present. So that's that book's project. And the second project, because people kept wanting to see the work, and I kept insisting that looking at the work wasn't the point. The point was the fact that all of these objects were named were named seriously. Like they named these objects and paintings seriously, these horrific names without thinking. And it still goes on today, like the negress with one arm, whatever. It's a horrible tradition. So I purposely withheld images from that book because I wanted people to really take in the language behind the art history. And then the second book is the one with the photographs. But and the reason why I waited to put that one out second was I wanted to say, because everywhere I went on tour, people wanted to see the images of the horrible paintings and the horrible sculpture, which I just think is like, you're asking for more hate. You do realize that. And I always say I'm not the emotional mammy for the country. I refuse to play that part. So if you want to see it, go look for it and then ask yourself, why do you want to continue? Right. And so the second book with the photographs is like, if you want to know what images I'm interested in, they're these. And these images are of a private archive I found under my grandmother's bed in South Central LA. Over 400 photographs that were taken between New Orleans and Los Angeles during the Great Migration. And I've already forgotten your question, trying to
That's so no.
detangle that. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. You are.
Okay.
This is wonderful.
Okay.
I've just asked you, how do you see the importance of your work? And you said you answered a lot of it, and
Okay.
not just historically, but also from the point of view of the Black woman. What would you say? But you really
Okay.
answered a lot of that.
Well, so one, I don't believe in the Black woman. I believe there are Black women everywhere, and everyone has their own identity and whatever. So, but what I wanted to do with this book, this is the first book, is my original plan was to email it to every Black woman on the planet. That was my total plan, because it was basically like, if you're feeling sick, I know why. This is one reason why, is the history of the Black woman, Black female figure in Western art. It's just a sick thing. Yeah, I wanted people to see it, Black women most of all. But then really this book is about whiteness. This book is about how absolutely heinous, well, the title poem, it's 79 pages. It's about how absolutely heinous Western art history has been with regard to Black women and women in general. But okay, I digress. But yes, right. So I just wanted to stop pretending that as beautiful and as expansive as Western art is, and it is, no denying it, no denying it. I've sat before artwork by Raphael for hours, no denying that there is a beautiful art tradition in the Western canon. I know that. I'm just saying, hand in hand, twinned, deeply twinned, is this practice of racism and sexism and every kind of phobia you can imagine within the practice, right? And the history of the museums, the history of repositories, the history of archives, the history of galleries, the history of the academy. It's just so horrible what went down while and because of all this beautiful art. Okay, now I'm going to shut.
No, have you ever asked yourself why that might be so? Have you
Why
ever asked,
would it be so?
you have you ever asked yourself, why would so much attention, an artwork in such a negative way be put on Black women? What would you have said if someone had asked you that?
Oh, you know, what we all say. You said you did Black studies. What we all say, like the human being has a very sick part of its mind, and we project. And you know, I personally think racism is a profound disease, a profound pathological disease, as is hate. I also think it's a contagion and it's run rampant. So you know, we're afraid of our bodies, we're afraid of ourselves, we're afraid of nature, we're afraid of anything that doesn't remind us of ourselves, you know, the usual. Everybody here could answer the question. It's you know, hate. That's why hate. You know, Toni Morrison and Amos Oz had this amazing conversation. They were talking about how boring hate is and how boring violence is. It's like it's hate. What do you mean? It's hate. But underneath that hate, where's that coming from? You know, probably fear, probably brokenness, trauma. You know, I see all these white supremacists. I'm doing a project in South Carolina right now, and the Klan is out. The Klan is out, and they're marching, and it's just, you know, like it's 1960s. And you know, I look at these kids, and I do think of them as kids, and I was like, I just want to take them and go, like, what happened to you, baby? What happened to you? Something happened to you.
Would you like to read some of your work so that we can hear what you have to
Sure.
say?
I was going to read this other poem, but now I'm going to read this other poem because of the questions. So I am the improvisational devorah.
Okay.
Thank you. I thought you were.
I'm going to read the first poem of the first book, and it's called Plantation. And then one morning, we woke up embracing on the bare floor of a large cage. To keep you happy, I decorated the bars. Because you had never been hungry, I knew I could tell you the Black side of my family owned slaves. I realized this is perhaps the one reason why I love you, because I told you this and you still wanted to kiss me. We laughed when I said plantation, fell into our chairs when I said cake. There were fingers on the floor and the split bodies of women who'd been torn apart by horses during the Inquisition. You'd said, well, I'll be damned. Every now and then you changed from a prancing black buck into a small high yellow girl, pigtailed, patent leather, eyes spinning gossamer, begging for egg salad and banana pudding. Or just as quickly, you'd become the girl's mother, pulling yourself away from yourself. Because my whole head was covered with a heaving beehive, you thought I didn't notice. I noticed. I cried honey. And then you were 14 and you had grown a glorious steel cock under your skirt. To brag, you rubbed yourself against me. Then your tongue was inside my mouth and I wanted to say, please ask me first, but it was your tongue, so who cared suddenly about your poor manners? We had books and a waterfall was falling in the corner. I didn't tell you I couldn't remember what that thing was you said to me once. That tender thing you'd said I should never forget. The moment you said it, I forgot it. I wondered if you thought we were lost. We weren't lost. We were lost. And meanwhile, all I could think about were the innumerable ways I would have loved to have eaten you, how being devoured can make one cry. And I hoped you liked the fresh, pleasant taste of juiced cane. I pulled your pubic bone to, you pulled my pubic bone toward you. I didn't say, it's still broken. I didn't tell you, there's still this crack. It was sore, but I stayed silent because you were smiling. You said, the bars look pretty, baby. then rubbed your hind legs up against me.
Thank you.
Sure.
Powerful. Do you want to say anything about that poem? Like, where did the words come from? Do you ever question that about your poetry? Where did that come from?
Okay, so but the reason why I decided to read that poem instead of the other poem is because you asked, where does all this come from? Like all the hate,
Yes.
all the violence, all the projection. And
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know. It's tragic what human beings are doing. I'd rather be in a disco. I'd rather be in a club partying. I swear to God, I don't understand. We choose violence over joy. It is the craziest thing to me. But I also wanted to read this poem because this is one of those poems that I have no idea where it came from. It sat down. I think it was the first line, right? And I was like, what? And I just sat down and kept writing. And then one morning we woke up on the bare floor of the bracelet on the bare floor of a large cage. I don't know where that came from.
Just incredible use of words, and it almost, if I didn't know better, I would say it's a past life, because it
Well,
has such.
it was interesting to me. No, it was, I mean, maybe, but it was interesting to
Could
me.
be.
It's about intimacy. It's about how all of our relationships, romantic and otherwise, in this case, it's very sexual, are infiltrated by history. How often history interrupts our intimacy, right?
Yes,
Even between people of the same cultures, like we're constantly just tearing each other to pieces, even the people we love the most, and more probably the people we love the most. And I was interested in that, and I was upset at somebody. I was upset. So, and I was just thinking about how, throughout life, how intimacy is the site of such profound tragedy. You remember this old school song? This poem is my version of that old school song, LaBelle, Two People. You guys remember? We love each other, want to cry together, right?
I
Sometimes.
love that group.
Isn't it a
I
shame? Isn't
Valley
it
of a
a shame?
Bell.
That's a song. Isn't it a shame? You guys remember that old school ballad?
I
It's
do
so
now,
tragic.
yeah.
It's so tragic. Or like the Spinners, I mean, this is that version. Like no matter how much we love each other, history's gonna be right there messing with us. And this was my version of that.
Thank you for creating that. Thank
Sure,
you for creating it.
sure.
Oh, we're going to go and talk about a different type of poem, one that and by the way, I feel so lucky to be here tonight. I just want you all to know
I do
this
too.
is so profoundly beautiful. I was reading DeVore's poem on seeing Effie Lee's work, and
Mm.
this kind of goes into a little bit about what you just described, because she does not, in her work, is very descriptive, and it reminded me of Toni Morrison's writing a little bit, and there
Mm.
was a spirituality that was a part of that writing.
Mm.
And I wanted, Devorah, could you discuss your use of the language as a powerful tool for transformation? And that's what I see for the both of you. You both use language in a way that is absolutely transforming, and sometimes gets us to look inside of ourselves, whether we want to or not. And could you discuss this poem as well as read it, and why you decided to look at the incredible work of Rosie Lee Tompkins, who was having a hard time within herself dealing with the fame that came with her quilts, the quilt work.
Yeah. Actually, Rosie Mae Tompkins
Oh,
is
did I
the
pronounce the name wrong? I'm sorry.
well, there are two. Well, she has
Yeah.
two names. So
Right, the famous
is
one.
the was her like nom de plume that she was
Right, right.
given. Effie Lee Morris was her. Effie Lee was her name her parents gave her in Arkansas, and
Mhm.
Morris was her husband's
Got it.
name. Been divorced, but she kept the name. And one of the things I've been interested in now is there's so much writing is done of famous people. God knows how many poems there are about Martin Luther King or about Rosa
Right.
Parks or about, and Effie Lee, she was a sharecropper in Arkansas, a very pretty woman, and took a train to California. It's like, no, that's not the life for me. and became an LVN. And her mother and grandmother had quilted, and she took up quilting at 40 and would go to the Berkeley flea market. And she didn't really quilt. The inside of a quilt is called a piece. And it's not a quilt until you put a border on it and you fill it with batting and a back. So she made pieces. And this guy, Eli Leon, he saw her pieces. He fell in love with them, started buying them. And she became actually in her time quite famous. And that's why she got this second persona. But what she did numerology. She had a political consciousness. She was a Seventh-day Adventist. She would put little pieces of sometimes the verse of a Bible in there, just the number, like, you know, John 4:12 or whatever. But sometimes they weren't really real verses, because I would look at some of the pictures of her stuff and look them up, and it was like, oh, okay. This is the one that didn't get in, you know? And so I became very interested in that, and interested in that dynamic of somebody who, it was brought to me by a harpist, Destiny Muhammad, who wanted me to work with her on a project with this. And so I did, but then I went and got the book of her quilts and started looking at them and just doing meditations on them. And I will see if I can pull up the poem. So I'm doing a whole thing called Quilted Words on her various there it is. Sorry. Um work from different points of view, but this is just me looking at it. And what I was so impressed with her was how purposeful she was. And a lot of people use scraps, literally, you know, old clothes and stuff. But she bought everything that she put into a quilt. On seeing Effie Lee's work, made to be touched, velvet and corduroy, velour and cotton, sequins and ribbons, silk threads, notes pointed and curved, fabric stitched in scattered patterns, which become unvoiced notes of a song you can almost hear, a glitter of stars pieced together and left untitled with ragged edges and searing centers. She made them to be touched. Most now are viewed framed, hung on neutral walls, or catalog pressed into glossy plates with names she did not create, borders she did not prescribe. She saw her universe and sewed the colors that she heard, scripture which she read, numbers she learned, vibrations of mysticism sewn into her sacred cloths.
Bravo.
You
That's
know,
beautiful.
thank you. I wanted that sense of the people we don't always look at, but that are doing just these beautiful, incredible things,
Yes.
you
A-
know.
And it was there was a spirituality in her work. And then I wanted to know if you would read Stardust, because there was something about that reminded me of one of my favorite poems of yours, Stardust. And would you be willing to read Stardust?
Yeah, yeah, let me see. Let me see if I
Okay.
can quick find it. I kind of know it by heart, but I don't want to butcher it.
I
Since it's mine.
just
Yeah,
it's
okay,
just
yeah, I've got
beautiful.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great, great, great.
Out of clay they caution, dust to dust they intone. From earth you came, and to earth you will return, they admonish. They remind us we are mortal and subject to death, yet insist on their eternals, demons and angels, paradise or purgatory, merely human with a finite number of days. But we have exploded as novas, burned through galaxies, explored far reaches of the Milky Way, ridden on the tail of comets, danced on the edge of asteroids until, in a dizzying frenzy of passion, we fell through the viscous ozone, past cooling clouds, to settle in the ooze that feeds the ocean's floor. It was there that we decided to grow limbs and tongue, all the while holding inside the truth of our origins. Magnesium, calcium, copper, iron, we are the stuff that stars are made of. It's a scientific fact, a cosmic trust. In ignorance and in knowing, we hold grains of the divine inside ourselves, and we always have.
Oh, I love that poem.
Oh, thank you.
It,
And I
it's
wanted to say
okay.
that one thing about
Yeah.
Effie Lee was, she said like that God had allowed her, had given her the gift of seeing so many colors,
Mm.
possibly more than other people saw, that it was a gift she was given, and to be able to have put stars, that's why she had sequins and stuff in her work, that all this was given to her. And so often she would pray and then she would quilt. And evidently she would sing while she quilted.
Wow, that's
Bring,
beautiful.
so that it would all be infused with spirit.
You,
Wow.
I find there's a spirituality in both of your works, and I would love you to talk because I look on here, there are writers here. There are people with an interest in writing, and a lot of times they always ask the writers, where does it come from you? Where does your art come from? Um, what is the place? Do you sit down and does it just flow out of you? And if it does, do you have to change it over and over to get to the point where you feel that this is your art? This is what you have written. Would you like to speak on that? I would love to hear.
On a good day, it flows.
Okay.
On a good day. Once I was told, and it was a really excellent piece of advice, make a date with the muse, and if the muse didn't show up, at least you did. And the muse will come more often if you keep your dates.
That's
So
so,
that's kind of how I do. And sometimes it's very difficult. And sometimes, Robin, like you were saying earlier, I'll be crying and I'm writing a poem.
yeah.
And I don't want to go there, but I know I have to go there, so I do. And I'm crying. It's hard. Everything is not, I don't want to look at this, but it's right in front of me. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, sometimes people, Dr. Richardson, that of Marcus books, Ray Richardson, she was a professor of mine. I took every course she taught at State. And she would come to me after I started writing poetry and she said, "Oh, here, I have something I want you to write a poem about." And
Oh my God.
I was like, what? And like one of her poems that I can't lay my hand on, thankfully, was about these young men who used to, they lived in the Bronx and they would stand on the side of a door where they couldn't see a woman. And when they saw the woman's back, they would throw a coat over her head, take her up to the roof and run a train on her. And so they did this to this woman, and the last guy in line, she was fighting and fighting, and she pulled off the coat and she was looking at her son.
Why?
And he jumped off the roof and killed himself. And the boys turned him in the next day. And she said she was told this story. And she said, "So I'd like you to write a poem about this kind of rape." And I'm like, "You don't want to do this." And she said, "So, and like, call me when you've got it done." And I did. It took me a while because
Yeah.
it took me a while.
Yeah.
So some come from the inside and some are brought from the outside, and some flow and uh some are rocks.
That, that,
Absolutely.
oh,
Wow,
oh,
Deborah, I'm glad that wasn't me being out to that home. That I wouldn't even know how to. Yeah. Um, I think it's the same for me too. I mean, it depends. Every poem has its own private history, or needs or whatever. Some rarely does a poem ever just come. I don't know that. I don't know what that feels like. It's happened a couple of times. Um, Yeah, I revise a lot. I'm from the Toni Morrison School. She said revision is delicious. I love revising, and I keep a diary. I think that's really important for my writing practice. I've been keeping a diary since I was 14, so I can't do math, 40 something years, right? Every single day except for when I had my kid or I'm sick or something. And I think that has helped me. I didn't know it. I didn't know it until quite recently. It makes me very comfortable with the page, which I didn't know. You know, I didn't know that was a gift from writing the diary, so that when I do try to write poems, it doesn't feel as terrifying just to sit down and do it. But the poetry itself is terrifying, It's terrifying. It's pure risk, you know. A friend of mine's dad, who was a shrink, a very old school shrink, he said to me when I started writing poetry, he said, it's very difficult because you're using the psyche as your material. And it felt to me like the most, I know, I was like, yes, that's exactly what it is. But I had never put that to words. So it depends on the poem. I mean, it depends on the poem. You know, mostly I get lines that come to me, and if they stay, then I'll sit down and try to work with it. If it's just some fleeting line, I let it go. Because the mind, I mean, speaking of spirituality, I am and have been since I was 18, a huge meditator. And so the mind, speaking of the Panther, a friend of mine who was a Black Panther, Adrian Humphrey, God rest her soul, dear, dear, dear friend. We used to joke when we would be meditating, she'd be like, playing with the NAACP lingo, how it says a mind, a terrible thing to waste. She would say, the mind, a terrible thing to have, like, I know, right? If you guys are meditators, you get the joke, and if you're Black meditators, you really get the joke. So I don't really listen to my mind a lot because the mind can take you on a trip. And so I wait till it's something that's persistent, usually. And then, like devorah, I get work requests from the outside. And I've tried to make that work for me so that I can also do work inside too. Yeah.
Is there someone that you would consider a mentor that really influenced your work and how you go about what you're doing? Because the way I find it very fascinating, your use of art. I find that absolutely fascinating.
I mean, people ask me this question all the time. And I was like, who hasn't influenced me? I mean, I'm just a thief. I'm a thief. And also, speaking of James Baldwin, to where I didn't know we had this in common, James Baldwin taught at my undergrad, Hampshire College. I never got to take a class with him, but he was going to chair my thesis, and he passed away. So whatever. I learned, I mean, it's just, please, I've never recovered from that. But I learn mostly from reading. I believe in reading as a teacher. I didn't do an MFA until I was in my late 40s, I think, maybe early 50s, and I'm going to be 60 in a few months. So, I tell myself all the time, the greatest writers in the world didn't do MFAs. There were no MFAs. So they learn by reading. So I'm a voracious reader. I read a lot. But people I've studied with, that said, I've had the profound honor of studying with some of the greatest scholars and writers of our time, both in terms of critical work like Evelyn Higginbotham. I mean, guys, I went to Harvard, even though I was in the divinity school for Sanskrit. I was working in the African American Studies department at like its zenith moment. So it was just nutters to be there. And then James Baldwin James Baldwin lived in our dorms, you guys. He lived in our dorms. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and the people who were teaching at Hampshire and in the Valley at the time, Mary McHenry, a lot of people don't know Mary McHenry, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant African American scholar. She just passed away. I'll never recover from that. She was my mentor for decades. She's Elizabeth McHenry's mother, who's a great scholar now. But then, at my writing, I studied with Yusef Komunyakaa, and I would pinch myself every single day I walked in that room. I could not believe it. I studied with Yusef Komunyakaa, Sharon Olds, Toni Morrison. I had a correspondence for a long time. That was beautiful. That was amazing. Yeah. But really I mean, I could go on and on and on because the one thing my parents did impress upon me is education. So I went to school a lot. I have 3 graduate degrees. It's excessive, I know, but it was because I love learning and I love reading. And, but the thing that has taught me the most was reading, just reading. Everything.
I think that's beautiful. I just think that's beautiful.
Do you want to get it? And in particular, I just want to say this. In particular, I read African and Caribbean literature the most, and then South Asian. But mostly, remember, you guys, the Heinemann catalog, devorah will remember this, right? Remember when Heinemann was like, everybody was reading Heinemann books, like Amatadu, right?
Yep.
People, right? Kamara, hey, all those people. I read every post-colonial novel in English I could get my hands on in the 70s and 80s.
I want you to read another poem. So if you want to get water, do you need some water? You have any
No,
water?
it's my voice. I know, you guys. It's because I'm not taking my asthma medicine. I'm being bad. my voice goes crazy, it gets raspier. No, I'm okay, but
You
this
okay?
is great because it answers one. I didn't know about this poem of yours, Devorah, so I remember it a little bit, but it's perfect because I think your poem and my poem are holding hands, and it also answers your question, Kim, about transmigration. I guess I will say I am always hesitant to say all Black people do all Black things. I don't believe in that. And I think we miss out on all the ways in which we have hundreds, if not thousands, of subcultures in the States, at least, and not all over the world. But all the Black people I know and grew up with believed in transmigration. And so it was nothing to hear when a baby was born, look at so and so come back again. If that's not so and so, I don't know who is, right? That kind of thing. And so when I started studying Sanskrit, and I lived in India for many years, transmigration was very no big deal to me. And it was nothing to be in like Kentucky Fried Chicken in Bombay and have somebody say, "Oh, sorry, I bumped into you. I'll get it back from me in another life. Ha ha ha." Like just transmigration was just so normal. And then when I started doing research on the Arctic, which we were talking about, lo and behold, the Inuit have a very, very deep relationship with transmigration. At this point, I think everybody does, except the West. The more research I do, the more I'm like, everybody believes in reincarnation. So anyway, I did all this research about the Inuit because in this book, the last book, I have a whole homage to Matthew Henson, who was one of my muses, African-American Arctic explorer. And in order to kind of really take in, because he lived there for 2 years, he lived in the Arctic for 2 years, to really take in what he was doing there. There are Afro-Inuit descendants of his. Like, I mean, it's
he was spreading the love.
I know. Exactly. So I really did a lot of research and I fell in love with Inuit theologies. I just fell in love with them. And one of them is, someone's saying, laughing. Anyway, and one of the things is about transmigration. So I'm going to read this poem called Navel. It's kind of like an Afro-Inuit response. And it's, Devorah, I'm trying to improv with you. Navel. We crawled out of her navel one by one, then waited until we were all here. That lucid moment when the last wet child learned to stand, we began walking. We walked slowly. We took some time. We took more than that. When we began to grow hungry, some offered to turn themselves into animals. Smiling, they said, "Here, eat me." Others turned into water, rivers, trees. Some turned themselves to dirt so we could walk a path. We crept toward the edges, clawed and crawled to the top of the world, and there we clung. Instead of a mouth, a woman spoke through a vibrant yellow bill. Sometimes we visited the man on the moon. Sometimes he led us inside his house. Sometimes his transparent, hollow wife would dance. Later, when people asked us, "Where did you come from?" we could only answer, "Water." A whole language comprised of just one word. We walked onto the water. We built houses on the water. We had babies on the water. We sewed clothes made of water with needles made of ice. The night, so constant, changed us. The planets taught us a vocabulary without any alphabet. The trees began to walk. At night, the ocean glowed green from underneath. Our roofs were made of whale ribs. Our lamps were stone that burned clear oil. And now I've turned my face into this page so we could be together again.
I love that poem.
I love it.
Yeah.
Just beautiful.
Thank you.
Just beautiful. Oh, it has a magical quality.
Thank you.
It's
I mean, that's another thief poem, right? You take all these ideas and smash them into a poem.
It's beautiful. Devorah, could you give us a poem to go with this? We're going to be playing back and forth a little bit here.
I love that.
Yeah. Do you have a poem that
let me
you'd like
see
to
if
read?
I can. Well, I'm not sure. Uh, yeah, I thought of one because I think it's really interesting, the whole uh all of the stories of creation,
Yeah.
how we came to be.
Yes,
Here we go.
yes.
Creation paradox. We hold the great great grandparents of our ancestors' grandparents in our bloodstreams, in our stomachs, in our hearts. Thousands of years rest inside our souls. In those years lives the record of our beginning. It is the sweetest marrow in our spine, the cleanest shine in our eyes, the open side of our laughter. You can read it in the lines on the soles of our feet. When we retell the stories of where we came from, we draw back tree branches to find hidden fruits which we savor, pointed thorns which make us bleed, the yesterdays that led to here, the here that leads to tomorrow. When
Mm.
we go back to the beginning, we find the stars. In the beginning, there was a time, we all say, when we were not. After that time, we were created, we were molded, we were spat out, we were sung into until we learned how to make, what to form, where to spit, why to sing. But once, long ago in the beginning, there was only one, and from that one, others were born, and out of those many, many came us. That is the story we all tell. But before that beginning, before the in the beginning, when we were born, there must have been another beginning. Before the spider crafting web laying 16 eggs, before the mountain birthing lovers birthing children, before the sky settling low to mate with earth, before light, before darkness, before breath even. There must have been another beginning, a beginning that lives in a place we call unknowable, yet it is braided into our genealogies. And it is said that it is in the beginning, it is this beginning, the beginning before our beginning. It is here that you must go if you want to find the faces of God. Thousands of years, thousands and thousands of years rest inside our souls.
Mm.
And I
Beautiful.
did the same thing, Robin. I mean, all that, the spider crafting eggs, those are all
Yes.
various creations. Exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, that's what you, I've
Yeah.
got a place for this in my poem.
You know what was fascinating when I was doing research on the Inuit and the circumpolar kind of history, and then looking out like you just did in that poem at all the myths, is that every culture has a myth about the flood, and it all
Yes.
happened around 10,000 years ago. That was so fascinating to me, and of course it's the last ice age. Of course, there have been many, but that was the last one. And I just love that. I just love that, you know,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
especially
There's
as
actually
Americans,
a
Deborah, do you?
documentary series on that. It's something called Ancient. I can't remember it right now, but it's about this man who goes around looking at all the Mayan iconography. He goes to Turkey, goes here, and it's all about
Yeah,
look at there was a flood.
absolutely. It
It's
covers,
not Noah's flood, but there
right.
was a flood, and
Yeah,
some people survived, and some of the
yeah,
people who
yeah,
survived had a lot of skills, and some of the people didn't.
yeah,
As in today's world, he says, look, we have very technological people, and we still have hundreds of gathers, one planet.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
those that
think it's
were,
really fascinating too that we uh, don't take myths more seriously because of that.
uh,
You
Yeah.
know,
yes,
songs, myths and songs, because books are relatively very young. They're very young in the history of humanity. So before that, we had memory and song. Poetry is one of the oldest art forms that human beings have. If I
Wonderful.
personally think it's the oldest one, but whatever. Okay.
oh,
So
it dance, babies dance before they even walk.
sure, dance. That's a good one. Dance, good. But you know what I mean? It's like I just feel like we've been telling our stories for a long, long time. And somehow we've been convinced to dismiss myth, old wives' tales, all these other things as just, fluff. But they hold a lot of history.
We
And
only have about,
knowledge and
oh,
lessons for living,
Yeah.
all
we only have
braided in
about,
there.
oh, sorry. We,
Agreed.
we only have about 7 minutes left. And one of the things I wanted to make sure that you two might consider talking about is a lot of times when people are lucky enough to step into the rooms with such talented poets, one of the things that they want to know is, what do they need to do? What can help them? What could they take away from this that might be something that could open themselves up? Because a lot of times there's fear in the written word, stepping up to the plate in writing. You're sometimes afraid that someone's going to find it, and then who knows what they might say.
Sure.
And so if the two of you could just speak to what was important to you or still is important to you about that whole process of writing, that could be helpful to
Sure.
our art.
Devorah, do you mind if I just jump in and say one thing? Because I appreciate your question so much, Kim. I forget that people find it hard to write in that way. But I want to say that when I was young, it took me so long to even think that I deserved to sit down at a desk and hold a pencil. Yeah, I would cry. I remember this when I would try to write. I would mostly think about the history of enslaved people not being allowed to learn to read or write. And I would hold a pencil and I would just cry. It just would mess with my mind completely about the history of literacy and prohibitive literacy in this country. And I always tell my students, I've traveled around the world many, many, many times, and I tell my students the longest journey I've ever been on is from my bed to my desk. That's the longest journey. It's fucking hard. It's hard. But then you get used to it like anything else, you guys. It's a muscle. It's a muscle. And yeah, if you're worried that somebody's going to read your shit, don't write it maybe you shouldn't be with those people. I'm sorry. I'm teasing halfway, but I'm not really teasing. It's like we need to be respected, you guys, and our work and our privacy most of all. And my thing with the poems that I write is like, if you don't like it, don't read it to my family. There's a poem in my first book about my grandfather who was a very sincere pedophile. And I wasn't going to put the poem in the book. And then I remembered all of those feminists who wrote all these poems, Devorah Major too, about sexual assault and how important those poems were for me to discover in my own recovery. And so I put it in. And I remember my editor called and said, Robin, are you sure you want to put this poem in your book? And I was like, yes, absolutely. It's the truth, right? And if anybody has a problem, that's not my problem because facts are facts, right? And it turned out that my publishing that poem had so many of my cousins come forward who had also been my grandfather's victims, which I didn't know about, right? So it created this incredible healing in our family. So, I mean, I'm going around the corner to go next door, as they say, to answer your question. But I just think that writing is practice. And you could sit there and write nothing. You could write the ABCs over and over again. Just get in the practice of being there. It's like Devorah said about let the muse know you're serious. Let the muse know. I will sit down and wait for you every Wednesday evening or Wednesday morning. And if you don't show up or not, that's not the point. The point is I want you to know I'm serious. And eventually things will happen. But what you're talking about, Kim, is also about healing other things that show up with writing, right? You got to believe in yourself, you guys. You got to believe in yourself. And writing is a great path to help you do that. It heals you. It heals you. I mean, Devorah, is this true? I mean, writing has healed me. Writing healed me. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that there's the basics. You must read. You must read.
Totally.
And you must write letters. I went through a period I wasn't writing. I went upstairs and I decided to make a list of all the reasons I wasn't writing.
Oh, nice.
And I was a single parent with 2 kids. I had a lot of things, I was like, the floor needs washing, and laundry needs to be done, and this and that. And after I don't know, I had about a page and a half of reasons I wasn't writing. It was like, I don't want to write about dead babies anymore. And I'm like, oh. And then that was the poem. Was I'm not writing because I've been writing about all these children I don't want to go there anymore. And it forced itself out. It's like here. And I went with it. I was weeping at the end and I went with it. And it was like, and then I was writing again. But to me, you have to have a certain amount of courage. You have to, I have to say I'm now single. And for many reasons, but one of them was the betrayal that my ex-husband started reading my journals.
Oh, hell
And I
no.
said, no, 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 no. If I choose to open one and read a piece to you,
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah.
You don't touch them. Well, there should be no I said, no. Well, why do you have to hide things? I'm not hiding. I'm private.
Yeah.
This is, and I think that that people have the courage to write it and have the courage to be private if you need to at this point,
Yeah.
for writers.
Yeah.
But do the work and put it up somewhere. But yeah, if you live with people that you can't trust them to receive what you're writing, you might want to investigate that.
Yeah. Exactly.
You might want to look into,
1,000%.
because trust is
1,000%.
everything, you know.
Yeah.
We
And
have 2
the thing is,
minutes left.
you better beware. Like, okay, you want to read my diaries? Beware. You might not like what you find. Go right ahead.
There you go.
I'm like, they're right there. Go right ahead. You might not like it. I don't feel any shame anymore about anything. Really, I can't imagine that I feel shame about anything. You guys, all we are living, beautiful mammals having an experience. What do we have to be ashamed of? It has taken me so much, so many decades. And also to all the people out there who will eventually see this video, who organize readings, it would be really, really progressive of you to organize a reading of single mothers.
Oh, yes.
What we do and how we manage to write and publish books, I don't know. When my first book came out, my sister would just happen to be at a reading, and my sister said, "You don't understand. She gets up at midnight, and at this point, this is my schedule. My kid was 1, no, not even, maybe 8 months. I would get up at midnight, and I would write till 5 in the morning for a year. For a year." Like we work hard. We work very hard, and I don't think that's right. I don't, but it is true. And so at some point, in terms of just the creative process, it might be really interesting to talk to single mothers about what it takes and what it means to create work in that context. I, for one, am very happy I'm a single mother, but I'm just saying, like, it's not for the dull.
Yeah, I
Or the
agree
faint
about
of heart.
shame. Shame to me has no value.
None.
Shame has no value,
Um,
at all.
I,
Yeah.
I'm afraid I have to hand the program over to Marissa, but this has been just listening to two of you is such an education, and it's so beautiful because
Wait, can
you
I just
allow
interrupt you? Because Devorah just said something that was so profound.
what? Sure.
That shame has no value. And I just want to slow it down and say it again, what she said, because it's profound. Shame has no value. And it kind of answers your question again, Kim, about how we come to writing and how we stay there. Shame has no value.
But it also answers the question about liberation too.
Sure.
What you two have done is there's so many parts of ourselves that are hiding around sexuality, around being female, around being a certain race. And what I see in this conversation is absolute liberation, absolute allowing yourself to just be, to feel,
Yeah.
to grow.
Yeah.
And so I just want to thank you. And everyone stay, because we're going to allow you to ask questions at the very end. But right now, Marisa is going to talk about take some questions or recite the questions that came from the audience. Are you here, Marissa? Is she here?
Yeah, she's
Yes.
here.
Okay,
Hi.
great.
I just want to
Awesome.
thank you all again for such a wonderful conversation, and just there's so much to think about. I will start in with our first question. Can Devorah tell us more about her parents? What she shared about being raised by artists made me curious to know more about who they are.
My father is born in New York City in Harlem Hospital, of Bahamian and Jamaican heritage. My grandmother's relatives mostly died in the 19 flu. So I only know the Bahamian family,
Hmm.
who I'm very, very close to that. My mother was from Chicago. She was Jewish. The deal my parents cut when she was pregnant with my brother, older brother, was that we would be in no way raised to be Jewish, which we were not.
Oh my God.
And we had no contact, virtually no contact with her family because we were Sfarad
Wow.
Sen. They weren't feeling that.
Yeah.
So I only came up as well, when I was born, I was a Negro. I didn't get to be black till I was, I don't know, 11 maybe. You
Same.
know,
Same.
something like that. But I was born as a Negro. And so, but that was how I was brought up. So and my mother painted, as I said, and my father was a writer. They had straight jobs. They had straight jobs and they did the other stuff. Although my father has a couple of books out. My mother has a bunch of paintings, some of which she sold. That was never their primary um, way of making money.
Thank you.
You're
Our next
welcome.
question is, and this is to both of you. Do either of you have favorite places to write or be creative? What's the most memorable place you ever wrote a poem?
I don't have any favorite places, but that story I just told about writing from 12 till midnight till 5 a.m., I wrote at my mother's kitchen table the whole time. And that was pretty special. I'd light candles and I just right then everybody was sleeping because single mothers. It was the only time there was quiet in the house. And now, my mother's passed. We've sold the house. It's a house I grew up in and we owned it for, I don't know, 50 something years. Um, and now that is a very special place for me.
Yeah.
I can't write in like cafes and stuff the way a lot of people can. I like quiet. I like quiet.
Yeah, I don't have a special place to write.
Mm.
I do like writing outdoors when I can. The same thing. There's a quiet, but I like being surrounded by nature, or I love water, the river, the ocean. But I don't. But that doesn't mean I just always have a pen and something to write on. I
Mhm.
don't particularly go to the ocean to write or go to the forest to write. I just might end up there. So no, I don't have a favorite place. I don't have a favorite time. I tend to be a night owl, so I tend to write a lot at night because that just seems to be the way my body chemistry is. But and like Robin, and now I learned I was not like this as a young writer, but I love editing. I just find it just
Yeah.
a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's just like you already have something to work with. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I do now that I didn't do before is I will overwrite for pages. And it might end up being a 10-line poem, but it's so much
Yep.
easier to cut. It's like it's kind of like the reverse of using salt in a recipe. Like if you put too much in, you can't take it out. With writing, if you put too much in, you can take it all out and just use like 10 good lines and it's fine. I love writing that way now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
a potato takes a lot of the salt out.
Exactly. Thank you.
But yeah, that's it. I mean, you really can. You can I mean, you can kill something if you just go too far. But
Sure.
that's the one thing I really like about computers
Totally.
because I save earlier
Totally.
versions
Totally.
so that when I totally destroy something, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that wasn't the right direction, and I
Yeah.
can go back to something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no,
Did
no
you learn the
page.
hard way? Because I learned the hard way about that. I kept
Yes,
saving over the same title and then I had reworked
yes, yeah, yes, I did. I
crap.
didn't know there was another
And
way
then
to
I
learn.
was
I've
like,
always
it
had a
was
hard way.
fine. It was fine. 10 edits ago, it was fine. And I can't remember what I did. The other
Yeah,
thing to do now,
yeah,
you guys, well, the other thing is one is I'm a morning person. So, and again, I think I'm a morning person because the house is quiet. I mean, I think it's just a quiet. I'm just trying to find quiet. I do have a little office here, but I work right here where I am right now, which is at the kitchen table. I like it. Um, but the other thing I'm doing now is I'm working on typewriters because A, I used to be a secretary and I could type really fast. And B, then I won't be tempted to get on the internet or answer my email or anything. So I write by hand, then I type it out. And then once I'm ready to like really, really get nitty gritty, I'll put it in a Word doc. I like that a lot.
but no favorite pen.
No.
No favorite pen, no favorite journal. I have lots of them, and
Yeah.
and now I'm remembering, excuse me, to date them.
You
Because
guys,
a lot of them don't have dates.
really, you could get so precious that you stop writing, right? You could get as like, oh, I can't write because the paper's wrong. Although I do that sometimes, or I can't write because whatever. Like it can stop you from writing.
I don't like ballpoint pens, which I don't. I only want them if they have a liquid gel or something. So yeah. No, none of that. Just go for it.
There was another question that I thought was really interesting. Is that the next one you have?
Yeah, that's our next one. So, and I think really this could be for all three of you. What advice would you give to libraries or other community resources to really celebrate and engage with poetry?
Say it again. What
first advice would you give to libraries and other community resources to really celebrate and engage with poetry?
It's not the question. That's not. I'm hesitating because there was another question that a gentleman had asked that I thought was really interesting. Maybe he took it down. His name was Joshua or something. Anyway, Joshua, I saw your question, and I don't remember what it was, but I remember that it was very poignant. What advice to give to libraries to? I'm sorry. Can you say it one more time? I'm so sorry.
No problem. What advice would you give to libraries or other community resources to really celebrate and engage with poetry?
Oh, well, buy more poetry, first of all. Like increase your collection. You know, it's heinous when you look at the New York Times bestsellers list. It's fiction and nonfiction. How dare they? One of the oldest literary art form, and they're talking. I mean, novels are new. Novels are very new. They're only a few hundred years old. You know, or you go to bookstores or book prizes or whatever. It's always fiction, nonfiction, fiction, nonfiction, and I love fiction and nonfiction. But poetry should be considered equal. And so, you know.
I mean, have readings. I know I did a thing where I had poems that were like broadsides, and I got the San Francisco Library to do a display of them.
Yeah.
When I was Poet Laureate, they had a newsletter, and one of the things I asked was that every month they had a feature poet, which I obviously picked them up because I was Laureate, and I put a poem in by them so that their newsletter had a poem every month.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, I think it's finding ways to integrate poetry into their system.
Yeah. And poetry used to be everywhere. I mean, it still is. You know, under COVID, I remember calling my editor and I was really depressed. And she said something like, will they be books in the future? And we were laughing. And she said that poetry books were flying off the shelves during COVID. And it made sense to her because people were grieving and lost. And poems are very healing. They just are, you know? So put them places. And I agree about reading series, like regular ones that go on for years, you know? The poetry is there and the poets are there in the Bay Area. My God, you guys have such a rich poetry kind of community. I mean, the community doesn't even do it justice. Like you have so many different poetic traditions that have come out of that place.
Yeah.
Well, I would also say that invite mothers and little kids as young as 3 years old to have a poetry programs using mothers, parents, fathers, and kids sitting down and actually writing poetry. I won my first poetry contest when I was 9 years old.
Aww.
We had a school one, and my mother took that book and read it to us every night. A new poem every night, and it was like magical to us. And so if you get the children involved very early, it becomes a natural part of their lives.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
I think that's not happening enough.
Yeah.
And you got to involve the whole family.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the libraries have children's story time, but there's some wonderful poets. I mean, Lucille Clifton has written poems for children.
She's wonderful.
Langston Hughes has written poems for children. I mean, there's so many that you can go to. It's like have these and not just have it be a story.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the problem, right? And then, right, that's the problem, that we privilege the idea of narrative and telling your story, and that's important, but it's not everything. It's just not. You know, sometimes a piece of work isn't a story; it's an experience, right?
Yeah, and
I would also say maybe partner with small presses. and
Yes.
and get the, you know, partner with reading series with them, or maybe partner with their prizes. You guys have such great things going on in Northern California. That's really where I started writing poetry in earnest, actually, is when I lived in the Bay Area for many, many years. Yeah.
And talk to newspapers and get the newspapers and libraries to work together. I talked to our local newspaper, and for like April Poetry Month, we had kids and little kids sending poems to the editor, and they published everything they got just about.
Yeah.
So this
Also
like,
reviewing books,
oh,
you
excellent.
know, reviewing books in your literature that goes out, Marissa. You know, highlight poetry books. People are publishing poetry books all the time. It's so fabulous.
And you know, I know San Francisco has the book that everybody's reading, but it's usually it's either a novel or it's a memoir.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
you know,
Pisses me
what would
off.
happen if you had like an anthology of
Totally.
poetry, and that was the book that everybody was reading and
Absolutely.
discussing the poems in that month? I mean, I think
Absolutely.
it's just to think about poetry,
It's so
not
simple.
put it
Absolutely.
in a little corner attic, you
Yeah,
know.
I know. Exactly. Right. What if they did that for a year? Like I used to always wonder, what if a city did that for a whole year? Like we're reading nothing but poets this year. You know, it's just sad. Anyway.
It's 7:23. I think we were going to open it about this time to the audience, I believe.
Yes. I think if Robin, if you want to answer that question,
I don't know.
I think
I can't see. I don't see it anymore.
we might have time for this last one. I'll read it real quick.
Oh, I see it. I see it. You go ahead, Marissa.
Um, so our audience member writes, this may be too personal, so not a problem if you don't want to answer. But in the face of fear and hate within yourself of being human, what practices do you have to accept your own humanity?
Yeah. Okay.
Writing, walks, etc.
Yeah. So now that I see it, I think we've answered that question actually, because it's about, I think what he's asking about is how do you get over your internalized shame and self-hatred and all that to get to your work. And I think we've answered it. But I think the one part that we didn't answer is about practices. I mean, for me, it was meditation. You know, if you learn to sit with yourself for 3 or 4 hours a day, it's, you know, it's a lot of work, you know. So for me, it was meditation. And also just, I don't know how it happens that you heal. I don't know. Grace, I don't know. Where suddenly you just start to turn around and go, wait a minute, there is nothing wrong with me. I didn't do anything. Why am I walking around with all this shame and self-hatred? Why? Like, you know,
Forgive yourself for being human and imperfect, because
yeah,
that's what we are. We are imperfect beings, but at the
exactly.
same time, we're starshine and we're all beautiful. You know, I think there has to be that sense of that, you know, just like, oh yeah, oh okay, I'm imperfect. Oh, that
Totally.
makes me human.
And so is
You
everybody
know?
else. And so is
Yeah,
everyone else.
exactly, exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you both so much.
Sure.
I will pass it back over to Kim for a little bit of a wrap up. So
Sure. Thank you for the questions.
I'm just so proud to even be here, and the wonderful, you both have given us healing words. What we wanted to do is to ask the audience if there was anything particular they wanted to say or ask Devorah and Robin that they think might be helpful to themselves as well as all of us.